Hey, so my name's Adam Blaney. I'm a lecturer in responsive architecture at Lancaster School of Architecture. So to give this talk some context is there's a bit of a blue sky vision of can we create truly adaptive cities that behave like living ecosystems, and how could they integrate with sort of existing biological kind of systems as well. Sort of they can share resources as well within that. And then a part of that is how do you actually sort of practically prototype and develop these through material systems, and that's where I'm really interested in how we actually design and fabrication processes to totally reinvent this stuff. And then on reflection to sort of bring it back into architectural kind of practice, sort of the ramifications of that or new ways of thinking with that as well. So obviously the way it's going is we have linear design and processes that predominate. And as a result of that, especially within architecture, we have buildings based on assembly of discrete components, and they're very inert, they're static. The buildings act in isolation and they can't share resources with that. Within design though, you can obviously design neighborhoods, but when it comes to practically implementing it and the design, the buildings, our whole material world is very static. So from this, there's obviously the rise of the circular economy that is quite interesting, where resources or materials are sort of circulated around a sort of a new material approach. But within the circular economy, there's also aspects of a circular material, and that's really interesting. So that's something that's sort of, it's universal within biology. So our bones is a really good example of when they're induced with localized stresses over a long period of time, they're able to adapt. Not only are they able to adapt, they're able to adapt multiple properties. So material compositions, geometries, and that is also within the whole system as well. So your body is acting as a system. They're able to self-heal. So because of these things, within sort of using the bone remodel analogies, it has an interrelationship with design, the design demands that are put on it, say mechanical stress, material properties and fabrication mechanisms, so they're all interrelated, and this is why they are living. They can accommodate time-based demands. Within sort of a wider context of biology, it also shares matter. So we're in this sort of a carbon cycle. A really good example of this is there's flows of matter as well. So this is where we've now come with an industrial revolution. We've started to skew this sort of carbon system. So it's all becoming out of kilter and we're not integrated into this. So these are the challenges of taking inspiration from biology of how we can now generate design and fabrication processes based on interrelationships. How can we do that and what are the implications of that? Sorry, go back. So the research that I've developed is an approach to design and fabrication approaches, which is called tunable environments. And this basically, the key to this is use of stimulus, so say modulating voltage, heat, act as a stimulus, some energy that enables us to interact with materials that can assemble themselves. And what that lets you do is create associations between design demands, material properties, and stimuli, and that lets you keep updating the physical structure based on design parameters. So that's kind of the key to it all. So then some practical experiments from this, or prototypes, was using, say, the electrolysis of seawater, and that is where electrical current is passed through a cathode scaffold, and then material aggregates upon these structures. I can then keep changing the voltage stimuli to change how patterns are grown, to change the global shape of it, to change material compositions. So it means information from these materials are no longer static. They can accommodate time, and it starts to reflect some aspects within biology. And then it starts to build towards this sort of ideas of adaptive structures. But it can, the sweet spot of it, not to sound sort of fat-headed, is you can interact with materials at very high resolutions, at molecular resolutions. So it's no longer limited to sort of geometric reconfigurations or adaptations. You can start to get true self-healing at very micro scales. Another aspect was developing MultiStimuli Systems, so where heat here, and this was really important, sort of having be able to take these objects out of these liquid environments, of these tanks. So it was wax that was magnetized. You can melt wax down, and then magnetism will then modulate it to change the shape of it, the translucities, the surface textures. So this means you can keep iterating the design as well. So no longer when a design becomes outmoded, unfashionable, damaged, we can put it in this environment, this fabrication environment. It can be self-healed, it can be dated to your own sort of subjective aesthetics kind of thing. So it starts to open up these kind of new design challenges of there's non-linear behaviors in this. So within an architectural context, if you were to interact with it or subvert your environment, how do we have design tools that monitor these sort of interactions as well? So there's new scope within designing sort of systems within architecture that sort of account for maybe potential damage to things as well. But the exchange or the trade-off is we can have things that are adaptive. How do we determine desirable adaptive sort of properties, especially within a sort of a multiple stakeholder context, not only within just human aspects or what multiple humans perceive as desirable, but also potentially opening up to sort of biodiversity as well, what's actually desirable across a sort of a world scale kind of thing. And then finally, sort of how do we even start to sort of then plan our urban cities based on this, based on material resources as well. And there's a sort of whole host of this, some speculative images of growing Paris as an adaptive megastructure kind of thing. So looking back at megastructure visions, where would they be located? How did they share resources as well? So I feel that by what's really great within architecture and in architectural education and sort of pitching it at that is the way that architecture education goes is it opens up these avenues to rethink things as well, these practical hands-on skills, the way of actually open up scale from neighborhoods to the actual material units and how you interact with that, the new aesthetics, the new way we design within that and everything as well. So I feel that it's a really good opportunity within architecture to start exploring adaptive potentials and materials as well. So thank you very much.